Right now, on the wooden table outside my shed here in Okinawa, there are two pairs of garden shears lying side by side in the morning sun. They are the same age, nearly 40 years old, bought on the same day from the same maker. One pair is a ruin, the blades bloomed over with orange rust, the pivot frozen solid, the kind of tool most people would drop in the bin without a second thought. The other pair is bright, clean steel, and it cuts a sheet of paper cleanly along its whole length. Here is what you need to know. 3 days ago, both pairs looked identical. Both were ruins. I rescued one of them, this bright one, with things that were already sitting in my kitchen: a bottle of vinegar, a spoon of salt, a piece of crumpled foil, and a little patience. Not one special product, not one trip to the store. And this morning, I left its twin untouched, rusted, exactly as I found it, so that you could see them side by side and know that I am not telling you stories. Today, I am going to show you exactly what I did. The old Japanese kitchen trick for pulling rust off any metal. The quick way for light rust that works in minutes, and the deep way for ruined tools that works overnight while you sleep. My name is Kenji Takara. I am 81 years old, and I have lived my whole life on the island of Okinawa, in the far south of Japan, and I must tell you what that means for a man who loves his tools. My island sits in the sea. The air here is warm, wet, and full of salt, every day of every year. Salt air is the sworn enemy of steel. It rusts a neglected blade here faster than almost anywhere on earth. And yet my family's tools, my grandfather's saws, my grandmother's kitchen knives, chisels older than my father, have passed down through generations bright and working. Not because we bought special products, because in a place where rust never sleeps, we learned long ago exactly how to undo it and exactly how to keep it from returning. Rust, you see, was never the death sentence the modern world believes it is. Rust is a surface illness with an old, cheap, reliable cure, and the cure is in your kitchen right now. But before I show you, let me tell you the part that should make you a little angry. Walk down the aisle of the hardware store and count the rust products. The spray cans of rust remover, $8, $12 each. The jugs of chemical converter, the navel jelly, the wire wheels, the special gloves for handling the harsh ones. An entire industry, shelf after shelf, built on a single quiet trick, convincing you that rust is a chemical emergency requiring a chemical product. And behind that shelf stands a bigger message still, the real message of the whole modern economy. When a tool rusts, throw it away and buy a new one. The new shears are only $20 after all. The new pruners are on sale. Why fight the rust at all? And so the landfills fill up with tools, millions of them, good steel, forged to last lifetimes, thrown away over a surface bloom of orange that a bottle of $2 vinegar would have dissolved overnight. Nobody at the store will ever tell you that. There is no profit for anyone in a grandmother's trick, except for you. Now, here is where almost everyone goes wrong, and if you skip this understanding, you will scrub until your arm aches, ruin good blades, and swear the old ways are nonsense. So listen closely. When most people attack rust, they attack it with force, coarse sandpaper, angle grinders, furious scraping. And force works, in a fashion, but force cannot tell the difference between the rust and the steel. It tears away both. It scratches polished surfaces, rounds off sharp edges, grinds away the maker's marks, and thins the very blade you are trying to save. Understand what rust actually is. It is iron that has been stolen by water and air. The surface of your own tool, converted into a soft, flaky orange crust, sitting on top of the good steel beneath. The old way does not fight that crust with muscle. It dissolves the bond, gently, chemically, with a mild kitchen acid that eats rust readily but touches sound steel only very slowly. The acid does the work. Your hands only wipe away the result. That is the whole philosophy. Dissolve, don't destroy. Patience instead of force. And the tool comes out of it whole, sharp, and unscarred. So, the trick itself. It has 2 speeds, and I will teach you both. The quick way, for light surface rust, the orange freckles and thin blooms on a knife, a pan, a hinge, chrome on a bicycle, works in minutes, right at the kitchen counter. The deep way, for a truly rusted tool like my 40-year-old shears, works overnight in a jar while you sleep. Both use the same humble general. Plain vinegar, the cheapest bottle in the store. $2 for enough to rescue every tool you own. Vinegar is a mild acid, and mild is exactly what we want. Strong enough to dissolve rust, gentle enough to spare the steel beneath, safe enough to pour out in the yard when you are done. Let us start with the quick way, because you can do it before this video is even finished. Take your lightly rusted metal to the sink. Pour a little vinegar over the rusted area, or, for a small item, into a shallow dish, and sprinkle salt onto the wet surface. The salt does 2 jobs at once. It strengthens the vinegar's bite, and it gives you a gentle, scouring grit that is far softer than steel. Now, instead of sandpaper, take a piece of ordinary aluminum foil from the kitchen drawer, crumple it into a loose ball, dip it in the vinegar, and rub the rusted spot in small circles. And here is the little piece of magic that makes people gasp the first time they see it. The foil is softer than the steel. It cannot scratch it, but it is harder than the rust, and as it rubs, the aluminum itself reacts with the rust and helps convert it away. Within a minute or 2, you will see the orange lifting off as a gray-brown paste, and bright metal appearing beneath your hand like the sun coming out. Wipe, rinse, look, and most light rust is simply gone, in minutes, with no scratches and no product. But what about the ruined tools? The frozen shears, the rust-welded pliers, the saw your father left in the barn, the ones the quick rub barely dents? For those, we go to the deep way. The overnight bath my grandfather kept in a corner of his shed in an old glass jar he called, with a small smile, the hospital. And what comes out of that jar in the morning is the part that turns grown men into believers. The deep way begins with a container, a glass jar, a plastic tub, an old bucket, anything that is not itself made of steel, deep enough to submerge the rusted parts of the tool completely. Into it goes plain white vinegar, straight from the bottle, no dilution. If the tool is large, you do not need to drown the whole thing, only the rusted portions must be under the surface. A saw blade can stand in a tall jar, a hinge can lie in a shallow dish. For a big, awkward piece, the head of an axe, a long machete. My grandfather's trick was to soak rags in vinegar, wrap them tightly around the rusted metal, and bind the whole thing in a plastic bag so it could not dry out. The wet rag is a bath you can wrap around anything. Now, the hard part, and I say this with a smile, because for most people it truly is the hard part. You walk away. You let the vinegar work overnight, 8 hours, 12 for heavy rust, a full day for the worst ruins. No scrubbing, no checking every 10 minutes. The mild acid works slowly and steadily, dissolving the bond between the rust and the steel, reaching into the pivot joints and threads and pitted hollows where no sandpaper could ever go. You will see small bubbles rising from the metal within the first hour. That is the acid quietly eating the rust, and it is one of the most satisfying sights in an old man's shed. In the morning, Lift the tool from the bath, and do not be alarmed by what you see. It will look worse, black, gray, sludgy, coated in a dark film. That film is the dissolved rust, dead and loosened, waiting to be wiped away. Take a stiff brush, an old toothbrush for small tools, a brass or nylon brush for large ones, and scrub under running water. The black sludge slides off, and beneath it, steel. Bare, gray, honest steel, with every pit and corner clean, the pivot moving again, the maker's mark readable again, after decades under the orange. For stubborn patches, a second shorter soak finishes the job. My 40-year-old shears took 1 night and 10 minutes of brushing. The steel that came out of that jar had not seen daylight in 15 years. And now, stop, because here comes the single most important step of the entire method, the one that separates the people who succeed from the people who write angry letters about vinegar. Freshly derusted steel is naked steel, and naked steel begins to rust again almost immediately. The vinegar has stripped away not only the rust but every trace of oil and protection. Leave the tool wet or even just damp in the air, and a new orange bloom, called flash rust, can appear within hours. So the moment the scrubbing is done, you must do 3 things in a row, without pause, as one motion. First, rinse the tool thoroughly in clean water, and for good measure, wipe it with a rag dipped in water with a spoonful of baking soda dissolved in it, which neutralizes the last of the acid hiding in joints and pits. Second, dry it completely, towel first. Then let it sit in the sun or near the stove until every hidden crevice is bone dry. Water left in a pivot is rust already scheduled. Third, oil it. Wipe every surface with a thin film of oil. For garden and workshop tools, any light machine oil or even used motor oil on a rag will do. For kitchen knives and anything that touches food, use a food-safe mineral oil or the traditional camellia oil, Tsubaki Abara, that Japanese craftsmen and sword keepers have wiped onto blades for centuries. Rinse, dry, oil, say it like a small prayer. The vinegar rescues the tool, the oil keeps it rescued. That is the whole method. And now let me give you the extra layers that most people overlook, the ones that turn a good trick into a lifelong skill. First, the baking soda paste for the delicate things. Vinegar is mild, but there are metals and finishes where you want milder still. A treasured old knife with a carbon steel blade you wish to keep its dark patina, a piece with painted or plated surfaces near the rust. For these, make a paste of baking soda and a little water, spread it over the rust spot, let it sit 10 minutes, and rub gently with the foil ball or a damp cloth. It is slower and gentler than the vinegar salt attack, and it gives you fine control on small spots. Between the vinegar bath, the vinegar salt foil rub, and the baking soda paste, you have a full toolbox, heavy, medium, and light, all from the kitchen shelf, all for pennies. Second, know what vinegar cannot do, because I will always tell you the truth. The bath removes rust. It does not restore steel that rust has already eaten away. A blade pitted deep will come out clean but still pitted, sound and usable but scarred. A tool rusted through, thin as paper, cannot be brought back by any liquid on earth. And do not leave good tools soaking for days on end. To be sure, once the rust is gone, the mild acid will slowly begin to dull and darken the sound steel itself. Overnight is the medicine. A week is neglect of a different kind. Also, keep the vinegar bath away from aluminum parts and treasured brass fittings, which the acid can darken. Steel and iron are its proper patients. Third, and this is the deepest layer of all, the cure is temporary. but prevention is forever. Rust needs only two things: bare metal and moisture. Deny it either, and it cannot begin. So learn the habit that made my family's tools immortal in the wettest air in Japan. Never put a tool away wet, and never put it away dry. Wet invites rust. Bone-dry bare steel invites it too. Every tool goes to its rest, wiped clean and carrying its thin film of oil. My grandfather kept a tin can in the shed with an oil-soaked rag coiled inside it, and the last thing his hand did with every tool, every single time, was pass it once through that rag before it went on the wall. 5 seconds. 60 years of bright steel. And for your toolbox or tool chest, an old trick of the trade. A piece of chalk or a small cloth bag of rice, tossed in the drawer, quietly drinks the moisture from the air before it can reach your blades. Let me tell you now about my grandmother's knife, because it is the reason I believe what I believe about rust. Her kitchen knife, the same one I have spoken of before, the one worn thin as a willow leaf by 60 years of sharpening, was carbon steel, which cuts like a dream and rusts like a curse. In our salt air, a carbon blade left wet at nightfall would freckle orange by morning, and in 60 years, her blade never rusted once, not once, because her hands had a liturgy she never once skipped. No matter how tired the day had left her, the knife was washed, dried on her apron until it squeaked, passed once through a cloth with a drop of camellia oil, and laid in its wooden rack, every evening, in that order, without exception, the way other people lock the front door. I asked her once, as a boy, why she fussed over it so, when the neighbor simply bought a cheap new knife whenever hers grew ugly. She was drying the blade as I asked, and she held it up so it caught the lamplight, and she said, "The neighbor has owned 20 knives and cared for none of them. I have cared for one knife my whole life. Which of us do you think knows how to keep a thing?" I did not understand her then. I understand her now. The rust was never really about the metal. It was about whether a person keeps what they have, or lets the world take it back a little at a time. And that is the larger truth I want to leave with you today, standing over these two pairs of shears, the ruined one and the rescued one, twins separated only by 3 days and a bottle of vinegar. Somewhere in your shed, your garage, your basement, there is a rusted tool right now, perhaps several. Perhaps your fathers, and the world has trained you to see them as garbage, as things whose time has passed, waiting politely for the bin. They are not garbage. They are good steel under a thin orange blanket, and everything needed to pull that blanket off is sitting in your kitchen for the price of a sandwich. When you rescue a tool, when you lift your father's old pliers out of the morning bath and see the bright steel and feel the joint move again under your thumb, you have done something larger than save $20. You have refused the little lie the whole throwaway world is built on, that things are done for when they are merely neglected. That is matanai, waste nothing, not the steel, not the money, not the history in an old tool's handle, and not the quiet satisfaction, older than any store, of keeping what is yours in good order with your own 2 hands. So tell me, in the comments below, where in this world do you live, and what is the rustiest tool you own? The one in the shed you could not bring yourself to throw away, your grandfather's saw, the frozen pliers, the garden shears gone orange? Tell me your place and your tool, because I read every message that comes to me, and I would dearly love to know who among you drops something into the vinegar jar tonight and lifts it out tomorrow morning into its second life. And the next time we sit together, I will show you what my grandfather kept in that tin can in his shed, the exact mixture on that oil rag, and the once-a-year treatment he gave every wooden handle on the farm, the reason his axe handle never cracked and his hammer never loosened in 50 years of hard use, for pennies in an afternoon. Until then, waste nothing, dissolve instead of destroy, and remember always that the people who lived closest to the earth understood things that we, with all our spray cans and all our shopping carts, are only now beginning to remember once again.